What is something illegal you have done and got away without getting caught? I used to have a total lead foot. One day, I was driving to my ex-wife's parents' house by myself. They lived in a small town right off of the freeway. Now, on the freeway I was driving about 80 miles per hour, 130 kph, which was standard for most drivers. When you pull off the freeway, it immediately drops to 25 miles per hour, 45 kph. So, I pull onto this main drag and start driving through the town. I'm about a mile down when suddenly I notice a police car pull up behind me. I look down and see that I'm driving at 45 miles per hour, 70 kph. A few things hit all at once. First, I couldn't afford a ticket. I was 20 miles over. I would have ended up with a $200 plus ticket just because I failed to decelerate. I was only 3 blocks from my in-laws, and the officer hadn't turned on his lights yet. For reasons only known to me, I immediately pulled over, turned off the car and started walking. The officer pulled up behind me, not knowing what to do, but still with no lights turned on. I just kept walking without turning around. I get to my in-laws and tell them what happened. They tell me that I have to go back for my car, so I do. The officer was gone. No consequences whatsoever, never received a ticket in the mail, never heard a thing. I would never, ever do it again. And that's how I got out of a major speeding violation. I'm sure he would have understood if you showed him your foot made of lead. I stole my own car from the tow impound lot. Best part was getting the certified letter months later that they were going to auction it if I didn't come and pay for it. You should have gone back with the letter and demanded to see the car. My friends and I didn't pay for our dinner at Steak and Shake this past weekend. I stood waiting at the register trying to pay for 20 minutes but no one came to take my money. It was 12:30 AM before we left. I say might, have a few pens from work in my drawer at home. This is not an admission of wrongdoing, nor can I attest to how they got there, if they're even there. I once kept a dead otter in my freezer after finding it on the side of the road. In the UK this can get a hefty fine and prison time without a license. Once I found out I released the dead otter into the wild. It was a bit like Free Willy but with less movement. How do you apply for a dead otter owning license? Stole a Blue Angels flag from the hangar they were parked in. When I was in the Navy the Blue Angels visited the airbase I was stationed at. They proceeded to kick all of our planes out of our hangar and I had to fix our birds out in the rain. In a fit of contempt, on the last day they were there, I went into the mez and stole the flag hanging from the overhead beams. I still have the flag and wear it like a cape from time to time. Thievery of other units' crap is a tradition in the military. While it may have been illegal, it sure as crap isn't discouraged. Assisted in semi-stealing a car. Almost 2 decades ago my cousin calls my dad and says his car broke down. As my dad has friends with heavy equipment he figured my dad could get a trailer to tow it on. So my dad, my uncle and I go pick up a flatbed tow truck from a friend of his then drive 2 hours to pick up the car. We find it near where it should be on the side of the highway so we load it up and go to a rest stop to secure it on the truck better. As my dad and my uncle are attaching straps I'm looking at the car and notice something is odd. My cousin's car, late 80s Audi, had broken speakers for whatever reason. They all stopped work so instead of replacing them with normal speakers he used house tower speakers, big ones at that back seat and passenger seat. I'm noticing there aren't any tower speakers in the car. I pointed this out and they stop and start looking at the car then check the plate number, they don't match. Cousin had a vanity plate. My dad immediately hooks the call, raises the bed and lets it roll off into a space at the rest area. We hop into the truck and drive off to find the car. We find it less than a mile away. Audi reliability jokes aside, what are the odds of 2 identical Audis same year, color and even rims and tires being broken down that close to each other? Not only that, the owner of that car must have been confused ASF. When I was a teenager, my Labrador got out of the yard and I finally found him at the pound with a bullet in his shoulder. I had to put him down. I inadvertently found out who did it. I spray painted his Corvette. After he got it repainted, I did it again. I would have haunted the frick out of that guy. I found out that this specific guy stole my phone from checking previous text on my account and calling numbers they were in contact with. He wouldn't admit he stole it, so I broke into his house via balcony, stole his laptop, and left a signed note to meet me and return my phone to get his laptop back. It totally worked and everyone got their stuff back. I stole a police radio from a TABC officer once, drunk as heck and underage at a club. I was on the dance floor at some club and an elderly lady asked if I wanted to dance. I was like, frick yeah, cougar action. She then asked me to follow her and I was like, frick yeah, this lady fricks. She then showed me her badge and I was like, frick. Officer took me to the back office of the club and threatened to take me to jail and decided on just giving me a fine. When she went to make a copy of my ID, she left her radio on the desk. I shoved that crap in my pants. I have no freaking clue why I did this. Went outside and called my friends and told them we have to leave. Got in the car and showed them what my drunk butt did and we all had a great laugh. Never paid the ticket and never received a warrant, so I guess I got away with it. I accidentally shoplifted some pudding cups once. I was at Target and was buying a couple of large bags of dog food which were in the basket part of the cart and several smaller items that were in the top part of the cart. I had tossed the pudding cups into the basket part before I put the dog food bags in and forgot they were there when I put all the smaller items on the belt to be rung up. They were hidden from view when the dog food bags were scanned. I saw them when I was putting the dog food bags into the trunk. If the lines weren't so long I would have gone back to pay for them, but 20+ minutes for a 99-cent item. I can live with that. If it were a more expensive item I would have returned to pay for it. I work at Target and basically, we're told that if someone walks out with something they forgot to pay for, it's on the cashiers for not checking. One lady called and said that she forgot to pay for a bottle of wine and the team lead told them they'll just mark it out. Basically, don't worry about it but don't try to steal. I once overslept for an oral English exam, so I forged the letter I received with the date and moved it to following week. Showed it to my English teacher and she said it was probably a mistake, but I had to show it to the school dean as well to get approval for a reschedule. I showed the forged letter to him and he instantly found a mistake I made in the letter and just casually said that the letter looked badly copied. I was sweating bullets at that point, because forging a letter for an exam is a pretty harsh offense and could have gotten me suspended. But he just shrugged it off and gave me permission for a reschedule. I guess since I wasn't a troublemaker he just gave me a pass. The dean was one of the cooler teachers at school though. He loved SpongeBob and if he gave you detention work, you had to make a SpongeBob figure with a sponge and such. He sounds cool. I trespassed a condo car park to see an expensive car. I pretended I lived there. I bet you took a picture of it too, you monster. Worked at a car dealership. Broke many finance and insurance fraud laws on a daily basis for years. Most finance managers do and may not even be aware of it. I stole a piece of obsidian from biology class. At the next lesson biology teacher came to our classroom and forced us to admit who stole an obsidian. But I didn't. Why were you looking at obsidian in biology class? Watching P under 18. You didn't. I was like 6 years old in a grocery store with my mom. She tells me to hold on to the gallon of apple juice because there was no more room in the cart for it. And I frickin' loved apple juice. So being an absolute compliant little crap, I held onto the juice as she went through the checkout line. Kept holding it as we left to the car, on the way home, and all the way to the fridge to hand it to her to put it in the right spot. Only then did she realize that we never paid for it. I said, but you told me to hold on to it. She just looks at me dumbfounded. Then deadpan tells me not to mention it to anyone else, that it was an accident, and that we are keeping it. In summary, stole apple juice, didn't get in trouble, and got to drink the entire gallon of that sweet ass nectar of the gods by myself. I visited an abandoned building. Someone called the police and 30 minutes later we saw firefighters walking into the huge building just to search us. Luckily we saw it when we were already out. Flown with weed in my checked luggage. This happened to me too. Went from Dallas to New York to London to Budapest before I found it. I think that makes me an international drug smuggler. I was visiting the beach, and when walking home with a friend from a bar at 4 AM on a Sunday night, we came across a jet ski on the beach being bounced around by the waves. My friend convinced me to ride it back with him the next mile to where we were staying. So we rode it in the ocean in pitch black while a storm was out in the distance. Cool, not scary. When we got to our place, we rode it around until the sun came up, and then I found the jet ski registration, found the guy on Facebook, played the good guy and messaged him and told him, hey, I found your jet ski at X location on the beach. Then went inside. It was a pretty thrilling experience. I don't know how illegal it was considering it was a jet ski just left in the ocean, and I returned it, but it was still pretty fun. Technically, it never left the ocean, so. When I was high school, my mom and I went to Walgreens to drop out my prescription for Vyvanse, ADHD stimulant for those who don't know, and the pharmacist, who knew I regularly got 60 pills for a 30-day supply, told my mom that the prescription indicated only 30 pills, not 60. She told my mom that in order to get the right number of pills, she would have to have my psychiatrist rewrite the prescription. Well, I was out of pills and had school the next day, so my mom was freaking out. She came back to the car with the prescription and explained that there was a line missing on a symbol used by the psychiatrist to indicate the number of pills per daily dose, and she was on the verge of a panic attack. I took the prescription sheet, observed the ink color and thickness, and asked my mom for a black pen. I carefully drew the extra line and told my mom to drive to the right down the street, and I went in to turn in the prescription to get filled. I got my medication and we went home. My boss forgot to sign my paycheck once, so I scribbled something on the signature line and took it to a different bank branch. I had completely forgot about that until I read your comment. GF's car got a flat tire and the company I worked for had a tire changer and wheel balancer, and I knew the guys who operated it. We just needed a tire. So we go to Walmart, but the tire shop was closing early because they were slow and would not sell me a tire. I was pretty peed and seen tires with cardboard cutouts in them on top of the shelves in the automotive department. I grabbed the one we needed and knocked out the cardboard and just walked out with it. Told the door greeter it was much cheaper here than anywhere else. I went to see Joe Biden speak during a campaign rally for the general election in 2008. It was at an apple orchard and the people who owned it had a basket of apples for Joe Biden and his staff by the stage. As soon as he left, I, along with half of the front row, got up and stole some of Joe's apples. They were among the best I've ever had. Sorry, Mr. Vice President, but if I had the chance I'd steal your apples all over again. Probably climbing a signal tower in Egypt. I realized afterwards that it was on military land, then proceeded to climb it another couple of times. Oh, to be young and carefree. When I went backpacking through Europe, I bought an airsoft pistol in Italy, a replica Beretta 92 FS, nickel plated. It looked real, it was heavy, I could have pointed it at you and you would think it was real. Because I'm a freaking idiot, I decided to bring it home to Canada with me. I packed it in my checked baggage, big backpack, and didn't think anything of it until I arrived back in Toronto and was asked to put my bag in the X-ray machine at customs. At this point I realized, holy frick, I'm bringing a gun into the country. Replica handguns are completely illegal. I would have been in a crapload of trouble, and I started to panic. Lucky me, I remembered exactly how I had packed the pistol, so when I lay the bag on the conveyor belt, I laid it down so that the X-ray wouldn't see the profile of the pistol. When the bag went through the machine, you could clearly see the gun, but it was at an angle facing away, so rather than a pistol shape, it was just a metal rectangle. The inspection agent guy, whatever, stopped the belt, pointed directly at the chunk of metal and said, "What's that?" I looked him dead in the eye and said, "It's a toy." The next few seconds felt like an eternity. I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck. I was terrified, but then he just said, "Okay, welcome home," and let me go. I retrieved my bag, walked into the main terminal, then went and threw up in the nearest garbage can. Yay, I was dumb, but I got away with it. I went into CVS for 3 things: deodorant, the specific pencils I like to use, and a notebook. I grabbed the deodorant, perused the office supply aisle and saw they didn't have the pencils I wanted, so I decided it wasn't worth it to get the notebook either. Feeling like my trip was a failure, I left, walked out of CVS with the deodorant in my hand. No alarm went off, no employee stopped me. About 3 steps outside of the door, I realized I just stole, however unintentionally. So I walked back in, bought the deodorant and 3 other items out of guilt. Grand theft deodorant. When I was about 10 years old, my mom was a single mom to me and my 2-year-old sister. We were extremely poor and lived from paycheck to paycheck constantly. We went big grocery shopping one day, meaning it was the beginning of the month and we had little to no food in the house, and got up to the counter, had everything bagged, and they wouldn't accept my mom's check because it had bounced before. She said, "Oh, okay, I'll run to the bank and come back with cash in just a few minutes. I'll set the cart over here." We walked to the side and the cashier moved on to the next person. My mom then continued pushing the cart and we walked out the door to our car. My mom feverishly loaded the groceries and we got the heck out of there. We never had any problems and continued to shop at that store for years. I know it's wrong to steal, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think it was a little cool how far my mom went to put food on the table for us, literally. A few years ago I was working at Waffle House on the graveyard shift. One of my co-workers got really fricked up on shift. Fistful of Xanax plus 2 4 Locos and bowl of weed. Right at the busy time, she blacks out and faceplanted onto the waffle iron I had just preheated. She burned a grid mark into her face. I had to pull her off but some of her face skin came off. Called an ambulance. Never saw her again. Worked the rest of the shift by myself. I was so shook up, was like 17 at the time, that I didn't realize until after I got home that I never cleaned her face skin off the waffle iron before the breakfast rush. So, I accidentally ended up feeding a few people waffles with human face cooked into them. This is the worst thing I've ever read. I was going on a camping trip with some friends and brought my gun because bears and such. I was traveling to a state that recognizes my concealed carry permit, but I had to pass through a state that didn't. I forgot to stop before crossing the border to unload the gun and lock it in its case away from the ammo. I should be in jail for life. Funny enough, I did the same trip the next year but remembered and just had it unloaded from the get-go. I got pulled over for license plate light not working, and the cop asked if I had any weapons. I said yes. He then asks if it's loaded. I tell him no, it's locked and the case away from the ammo. Why, he asked. I explain I had to travel through X state which doesn't recognize my CC permit. Well, you're not in X anymore, you're in Y. Load that crap up. He still wrote me a ticket. You have been visited by the source Chihuahua. You will be blessed with good pasta, but only if you comment simmer well. Papa simmer well papa. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.